All right, thanks everybody for coming along here, especially Ryan. I want to thank Ryan for letting us use his property. Basically, you heard Rob Hunt say a minute ago about this irrigation project. It's an exciting project. It's a different project to what has been done before. It's a consortium type approach. So we've got BPS, pharmacists and ATS who are basically the delivery providers or service providers on the project. SRA is sort of was sitting up here. We're running the project, making sure everything happens. It's been round one, round two, and now round three is actually going to be opening up at the end of this week. Round one, we've had 1,800 hectares involved already. Round two, oh sorry, not this week, next month. Round two is there's 2,500 hectares. We've had about, I think we just got over, with the round three growers coming to be over 60 growers involved. In particular, the project is based around, and I've got a few little things set up here. I can't quite do what Mika did. Unfortunately, Sunwater have the channels all turned off and we basically can't start a pump and we can't turn anything on. But you guys have all seen this before. It's nothing spectacular. You hit a button on a screen and then the valve opens up there. You turn a pump on, the pump starts. It's pretty cool stuff. But yeah, we're not going to start it when there's no water here. It just doesn't make sense. But the technology involved, it's about smart technology. That's what the project's about. So there's quite a number of different tools that are available, and ranging from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. I've got some examples of level 1 technology here. You all may have seen a GDOT before. Basically, this is not how you install it right here at the front of the field. It does go down somewhere else, but I've just put this here. It's not yours, Ryan, by the way. I'm taking it away again. But yeah, and we've got a capacitance probe and some tensiometers as well. So you guys may have seen these things around the place. All very simple scheduling tools. Project is about scheduling and how much water you apply. That's the key thing. If we can reduce the amount of water we apply, we reduce the amount of energy we use, we have an environmental impact. So that's what it's all about. But not only the environmental impact, we have a productivity impact and a profitability impact. That's what we're all about. That's what this project, that's why it excites me. Growers are excited about it. I've gone to many shed meetings and spoken about it. And I keep getting the same feedback. How do I get involved with this project? And it's really good to hear. So level 2 is like your pump timers, so it's like simple automation or some valves on some of these actuators on the front that are controlled just by time and not by an end of row sensor. Now, just to give you an example here, so we've got an actuator there. Like I said before, there's a pump just there. It's got a sensor in the top of the cylinder to know the height. And then we've got an end of row sensor just over the other side of the drain there. So basically, in theory, this whole farm should be able to run automated. So you'll use Irrigweb, it'll turn around and say, this is when you need to irrigate, and it'll uplink into this system, start the pump, and then turn it over to the next set when it needs to happen. So it hits the sensor at the bottom, spins it over to the next set, away you go. So that's all great. What's important to me is this man right here, the farmer. What is the farmer getting out of this? So Ryan, if you want to come over here, to me, all this stuff, the technology, the advisors, everything that we do is really good. But this guy here is the guy that's getting the benefit out of it. And I really think it's important to acknowledge you're also putting a lot of your own money into this, as are the other growers. So there's a rebate system that works, and I think here you're eligible for $150 a hectare.
Yeah.
So straight away, Ryan, why have you gone to a system like this?
Probably the big thing for us, when you would have driven to this farm, we're right on the highway. These two blocks either side of this centre headland, their average road length's 1.5 kilometres long. We use very high flow rates here. So if you talk to people in the Delta where you might, be using a couple of litres a second, we're using 3 and beyond. We've done a lot of trial work. We're trying to maximise how much water we can put down the row, get it to the other end as quick as we can to try and minimise losses with nutrients, also pesticides. These two blocks don't have recycle pits. It's on the other side of the highway. So it's a very visual thing when we flood the bottom end of our paddock and people are driving past and think, oh, all that water just ends up in the Bradders. So we're trying to be seen as doing the right thing in our community, and that's why we wanted to do it as one sort of side of it. The other thing, my mates at Sunwater don't really like it when we're taking high capacity pump flows out of a channel and then we set timers and the channels or the pump stop for 6 hours. The system for Sunwater can't respond quick enough.
So you had pump timers on
Yeah,
in here
yeah,
already?
we still run timers.
Yeah.
So it was always a headache with that. So I'd be getting phone calls from the Sunwater officers, you know, complaining that we're dropping the channel and it gains back. And so there was a lot of complexity for those guys. So we're trying to make the system run 24 hours a day. The other beauty for us doing that, I've now got the irrigation guy that looks after this farm. He can start and stop pumps, open valves from home using his mobile phone. The only thing he has to do in the morning is come past you to make sure no fluming split or anything like that. We haven't gone to that detail yet with pressure capacitors and those sorts of things to, you know, override it if fluming happens to split. The other thing that we try and do as well, and Terry mentioned, we've got height monitors in the 3 of our cylinders on this farm. So when we're moving from the West Braddock Creek all the way down to Ponrelli's farm, if we don't sit there and manually control the inflows from the pumps, well, then we overflow cylinders. So with the Wiser program, we've got that pump there designed now. We just got to install the VF drive in it, so we can monitor the height in that cylinder, the other 2 cylinders, and vary the flow of that one pump, because it's a pretty big channel pump, and keep the maximum height or maximum pressure in this open system so that we don't overflow cylinders. We can push as much water as we can around the farm and not lose it over cylinders, lose power in the sense that we're just basically pumping water to flow over the top. The other thing I don't like doing is with our pumps, the way they were designed, they're all got dump valves. So if we do pump too much water, we can open a valve and dump it. So there's another cost. We're actually pumping the water through the pump just to dump it back in the cylinder. It doesn't go through the meter, but we're just pumping water for the fun of it. So just to try and minimise all those sort of costs.
So
And-
you've got a base station, but it's not actually on this farm, is it?
No.
It's over on the other shed, over across the road?
Yep, so everything that's run on this farm is controlled by, or from my office on Plaza Road or Drona Road. So it's all just radio communicated. The other thing that we built into the system when we designed it, we got another 260 hectares on Drona Road that we're looking at. That if this system works well, we'll automate that farm as well, talk to it all from the one computer, and then we can just potentially leapfrog, because we've got probably about 1,200 hectares just in the Selkirk area plus Jardine, that we can leapfrog the communication from that one office and just bounce it from radio site to radio site and potentially automate the whole thing. It cuts down for us. I'm probably stealing your question.
No, I was going to ask you. So a big part of this project's record keeping. So,
Yep.
you know, is that something that you thought about when this? Obviously, you just said how many hectares you got. There's a lot of paper to write down how many different sets that you've got. This farm alone probably got
Yeah.
God knows how many sets. So if that becomes automatic record keeping, surely that's got to be a benefit.
Oh, it's always, yeah, it always is. I've been running EriWeb. I was probably one of the guinea pigs when it first sort of kicked off. So I've been using that system for probably about 6 or 7 years now. So that side of it's nothing new to me. I created the time in my day. That's why I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to try and get it all done. This system, like Terry said, we haven't got it linked to EriWeb yet to start and stop pumps, but at least we can see it. It triggers it. I'll get it wrong. Sherry's crew.
ATS, yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Basically remapped my EriWeb for each individual block on this farm. When I do it myself, or when I was doing it myself, I got 4 blocks on this farm. I used to do 1 start and 1 stop, and then as we progress across the set, I just wanted to start time. So I made the assumption to make my life easier that, yep, it takes me 5 days to water that. Now with the automation, the key thing for us is the saving, because I don't have to put controllers on my pumps to just manually stop them in 18 hours. They're running 24 hours a day, and to irrigate this farm with the 360 or 320 hectares now, we actually gain 2 days by just not stopping pumps.
So you're saving money, you're saving energy, saving power, saving
Yep.
water,
Save my mates at Sunwater headaches. Yeah.
and your work and your employees are able to do other things. They still got to come and check the water. You've already mentioned that. That's
Yeah.
for sure. And I don't think that's something. That's
Yeah.
part of the project is not to actually reduce labour. The idea is to be able to utilise that labour better.
Oh, that's right. And that's a big thing for us, and everyone understands, like, from a farming point of view, trying to find good, reliable people to work on your farm is a challenge. To try and simplify some of their operations to make their time that they've got in their 10-hour working day more effectively used. If they don't have to drive around this farm 3 or 4 times in a day, checking sets, checking water, the computer does it. They can just quickly zip past here at 6 o'clock in the morning, do a drive-by, make sure the right set's running, do it again in the afternoon. They go home, peace of mind. If something needs to change, they can, check it while they're watching the footy. It's good because they don't charge me for that time, which is good.
So how have you found the employees? Have they been able to, a lot of people aren't very good with technology. Have they been okay with it? They've been able to pick it up?
I think from an automation point of view, it's probably actually easier than probably trying to explain, start this pump at midday, turn it off at 6, come back at 4 o'clock, check the end of the road and make sure we don't have a flood. Whereas the computer does it, they don't have to think as much, they just have to drive past it. Because that was my biggest challenge as probably a manager, is trying to probably educate my irrigation guys the finesse of running this farm when we got multiple row lengths. We got 1.5K here, we got 800 on that block, 500 there. Now the system runs the whole thing, and we just set the times at the present point in time until we get our end of row sensors going, and we can have that block there run for 12 hours. These are running for 18, that one's running for 10, and it all just changes automatically.
So the end of row sensors, that's sort of, I noticed there's one over there, so that's the next step, really. So that's the optimization to try and actually work out, we've run it for 12 at the moment, or whatever it is, 10, but what if it gets through in 8, or what if it gets through in 9?
Yeah.
That's
And
where the big savings are going to come in.
That's for us to try and nut out. I know
It's a
probably
calibration,
gonna,
isn't it?
yeah, talk about some of the flow rates that we've had come off these flocks, because that was one of the big triggers, like Terry mentioned earlier. We used to water these flocks for 24 hours a day. We'd start them at 6, finish them and change them over at 6 in the morning, and you go past some of these sets the following morning at 6 o'clock and there's still water running out the end. So we've had water go for 24 hours, run out the bottom for 24 hours, and when you start doing the numbers, that's a hell of a lot of channel water that we're just paying to pump through a paddock and then trying our best to pick it up in a recycle pit across the other road. And unless we upgraded from a 6-inch pump to a 12-inch pump, we're just not going to do it. So they don't seem big numbers when you sit down and think, we lost 20 mils of runoff out the bottom end, but it's 20 mils for nearly 24 hours dribbling out the end, and you start crunching those numbers across 220 hectares. Yeah, it didn't take long to pay off 100 grand.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Arwen will speak about this after, but I think there was a Cane to Creek sort of project that you were involved in where the flumes were in. Is that what first sort of sparked your interest in just how much water is actually running off? Because we all know, and look, I was one of them, I was a grower, and basically you have 12-hour sets or 24-hour sets because that's good timing. It works really well for your lifestyle, it works really well for everything. But in reality, we seem to find, especially in this project, that it's 1 hour less, 2 hours less, 3 hours, it can be even 4. Would it surprise you if I told you that one of the participants in the project actually on one particular farm saved 30% of their irrigation?
Oh, wouldn't surprise me at all.
Doesn't surprise you,
even on this farm here, we haven't crunched the numbers, but when we were doing 24-hour irrigations, the megalitres coming out the end is scary. The little gully that you cross just after Rob's and our blocks here on the highway, when we're irrigating, it's running probably 6 inches deep non-stop. Whereas now the boys are finessing the system, it's getting better. And one of the first comments that my irrigation guy said to me, he said, I've run the recycle pit out of water. And I'm thinking, that's a great thing, because we're not wasting as much to keep a 6-inch recycle pit running 24 hours a day, burning power, pumping water out of the channel just to fill a recycle pit to pump it back on the paddock. So it's just changing, in a way, it's changing that thinking in some of my irrigation guys to say, yep, it's good that you run the recycle pit out of water. It means you're not filling it up with wasted water. So,
changing that mindset.
Yeah. And
no,
automation's doing that because we're, basically changing the sets when it needs to be done, not when it's convenient to do it.
I touched on an environmental outcome before. Obviously, to me, it just makes sense. If you reduce the amount of water you use, you're going to have a better environmental impact, right? Is that in the back of your mind in this project? What was the thing that basically made you decide I want to be a part of this project?
Well, it's probably multiple things as well. Like it's the visual presence on the highway, and we've done monitoring even with Arwen again, looking at. We use a lot of pre-emergent. We're a big grower. We have one spray contractor. I share it with Brian's owners as well. So he's got 2,000 hectares to spray for us. He's got a couple of thousand for the Rocks Farming Company, and plus he does other people. So trying to get all the ducks to line up in a row when you're relying on a spray contractor, we pre-emerge thing. And that was probably one of the big things that when we started monitoring some of that, we started getting the numbers of what our runoff was. The chemical side wasn't too bad. We're doing the right things by delaying our irrigation, but it was just those volumes that came off were scary.
Yeah.
And that was, being part of these projects, and even with some of the work that Marion was doing with, what's the one where we measure the flow down the paddock?
Cisco
run.
Yep.
They're all bits of information that make the farmer's life a little bit easy. Like, we get bombarded with information, but they're things that we're running through our head to try and say, righto, if we can up our inflow rates, shorten our run times, we get the water to the other end, we're not losing deep drainage, we're not losing pesticides and fertiliser, because things are getting tighter and tighter. We can't afford to lose it.
Yeah.
So yeah, all those things just
It's like a holistic view.
Yeah, gel together, and that's why probably being a corporate farmer, in a sense, I stick my hand up to volunteer for a lot of trials, even though people say it's not my farm, but I've been on the other side of the fence being a researcher as well, and getting trial sites from their point of view is always difficult. And I've got plenty of ground. I've got a couple of thousand hectares, so, and the information comes to me first, so I can see what's going on.
And that's much appreciated from all the advisors who have to work with you.
Yeah.
It really makes a difference when you've got somebody who understands the whole principles of the trials and why we do it and the numbers that we get back. So again, like I said, this whole project's about measurement. What about the process that you said Agritech Solutions were the people involved? Were you happy with the process that they took? There's like a baseline assessment that they do.
Oh, for me, I can't complain about it, because a lot of the information that I have is readily available, just to basically spew it out on the table, and Sherry comes along and says, what are you doing here? The baseline stuff's easy.
And there's a recommendation that comes from that.
And then they go back, build the system. We can tweak it to whatever we want, and to make sure that everything that we design is right. Like even some of our outlets, it was good in a way because the irrigation guy had to go through and undo. Like we helped Michael out to install some of this stuff. So we just went and replaced some taps as well. Like, you're looking at a $700 tap, but to make the system work, we don't want to break an actuator. It's probably a little bit more expensive, but just to get some of that old stuff that's, it's time consuming, because they're sitting there greasing gear heads, when these things, as soon as you replace a tap, they don't have to come back.
So it's giving you an opportunity to upgrade on some stuff as well.
So we, and the beauty of the funding as well is it just helps out. Well, I think on the grand scheme of it, it cost us better around the $100-odd to automate this entire farm. We got probably about 40 back, I think, in subsidy. So for us, it's a no-brainer. Like, it's just that time when someone throws a bit of money at a project like this, it's easy.
So just on that, when the project was first designed, a lot of the thinking was around the scheduling tools and the pump timers, and we spoke about the pump timers. But what we're actually seeing is a lot more people are interested in the automation. Can you give any sort of feedback of why you think that might be? Is it the price of sugar? I don't know. I'm just sort of, what is it just the fact that, so I'll give you my example. So as the district manager, I've created this district plan, and irrigation came up as the #1 constraint, but it also came up as the #1 opportunity in the Burdekin to improve productivity and profitability. Is that the thinking, you think? Is that the reason why the growers seem to be?
I think, well, for us, probably the automation just allows you to sleep in. GDOTs, like I think I've got about 6 GDOTs. The success rate's probably not that great. And we've had, VirusScan Pros, but wherever you put them in, they're just in one location. So like Terry said, he's got it in a bucket at the end of the row. I could put that in, 30 metres and then go fish it out. But it's just measuring that one point in time. That's why I pulled out our EnviroScans, because at the end of the day, it's a lot of work. yep, you got to be sitting there reading them. The best one I had was one of the BPS ones where it was basically buried until such time as out controlled traffic or zonal tillage was that spot on that they ripped the top of it with a ripper leg.
Yeah. So the practical
Good old
side of it.
precision.
It's practical. It's
Yeah,
practical.
and that was like the tools are good if they can link to the system, and I think that's probably going to be our next step. That the end of row sensors will potentially be replaced with like a Centec probe or something like that, where we can put them in a particular spot in the paddock, and then make the assumption off that, because that's why they're sitting in tail drains at the moment, because no one wants to walk through standing cane and they guess, oh, we should put it at 200 metres for a start, but we really need it at 500 or something. So we're trying to build the system.
So Russell Jordan's farm, I think he's had this sort of stuff out here for 7 years now. Did you ever go out and have a look at some of that gear when you first started? Or
I drive past it a lot, but I never actually went and saw it in action, because I suppose we've probably had a good working relationship with Steve and his team.
Okay.
And I've asked the question a number of times, just trying to get to automation, but it's always been, the hectare rate or the cost was always up there, and things are coming down in cost. And then as soon as the next funding sort of came out, I thought, yep, now's the time to seize it. And because we're scaling up like Australian Cane Farms now, we've picked up another little property up at Northcote there, and like I said earlier, getting staff to manage these irrigation systems. If I can have the computer do it and the staff member just has to buzz past and check, we can irrigate or manage a lot more with less resources.
So where to from now? What happens here for Australian Cane Farms? This is the start, I'd imagine.
This was our guinea pig farm, so obviously our board of directors are looking closely at this. They love looking at dollars. So the next thing will just be reassuring them that it's working with actual numbers, and that's why the information that Arwen's collecting with what we're monitoring already, to just throw that back to them and say, look, if we've saved a couple of $100 a hectare over 300 hectares and we do that for 10 years or something like that, it's easier to say, yep, let's expand the system and run it widespread. Because I'm looking after the Davco farm as well, that's where we see the potential. Because it's one big rectangle in a sense with all interconnected pipelines, that if we could automate that, would make our irrigation guys' lives up there a hell of a lot easier. So this was our little baby project, and we're looking to expand it.
Well, I don't know if there's anything else you got to say, but I really appreciate your time.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Terry.
It's always great to talk to the people on the ground and get their comments and what they've learnt through the process, and hopefully we continue to learn. And obviously the project's not finished. They'll be supporting you now post automation setup. So really appreciate your time. And I think that's probably a good segue onto Arwen's thing. But if there's any questions, happy for you throw them at me or Ryan while we've got him up here.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ryan.